Great, that's perfect. My name is Artem Sokovets. I'm a team lead for automation team, like Java, Kotlin, couple of certificates, and my presentation will have a lot of code, and so be prepared. There will be lots of code. And the plan is I will talk what are the wrappers for page object, and that's a trivial story. Then I will tell you what I don't like in the current approach and current page object template. And then we'll talk about how page object looks in the interfaces. We'll look at how it looks, the implementation in Atlas, which inherits HTML elements. Do you know HTML elements? Who knows HTML elements? Okay, not enough people. Okay, so and then features and instruments, and then I'll finalize with the results. So if you're an automation expert, then your boss comes and says you need to do automation for a project. And you say, okay, I will be doing this, and or you start looking for a new job on Headhunter. Okay, what do we have in the internet? Imagine you have UI, like you have web UI. And you, for example, you found Selenium and wrote something like this. Like you take Selenium API and automated something, and this test will be, there will be a lot of such tests. And you will not only be happy, but you'll even probably get a bonus. But with time, you will probably wish to improve your skill, like you're an automation expert now, and so you start looking for different new approaches and improvements to your test project. For example, you find a page object pattern. Even my grandma knows about it, or heard about it. So this pattern is well known. I won't be talking to you about it, but I will be talking about the wrappers for it. So we work in the context of current page. Page element is some wrapper that helps us wrap our HTML components. It's part of the HTML elements developed by Yandex, and has a loadable component that enables us to wait till the page is loaded and all the JavaScripts have performed correctly, and then the last part, called screenplay, is part of Serenity, and it adds some logic to our steps. So as not enough people know about this tool, HTML Elements was devised in 2011 to automate UI, but currently it's a little bit outdated. Only the library versions are updated. It's written on Java, and this instrument is widely used. And even in my test projects, I prefer it because it has the page element wrapper and approach. And what you see here is some blog, GitHub header. And if I use page element approach, then in my class I define some layer. I define all the buttons and components and add some methods to work with those components. The page element, who knows page element? Nod or raise your hand. I understand it's the last presentation and it's hard to be here, but you need to know, to learn what I say to you today. So using this method, you can add on your page some layers, table, header, footer, some blocks, and add some specific methods to these layers to work with the components. For example, you can add last input to your table method. So you create some wrappers for your elements on your web page. So when you use this approach, often questions arise that often have no answers. Even if you combine the current page elements with other frameworks, there are some gaps that I will be talking about that I don't like, and maybe you'll support me in this. So some things that I don't like here. For example, if I have described some block, for example header, my tests would work with this layer, and I need this block to be copied from one page to another. And if you have a lot of such pages and a lot of layers, then you have duplication of the elements, the crazy copy-paste that you do. And second thing is when you define your pages, your element has hundreds of elements, you see that those elements, locators, are the same, but the text is different. And it happens that we define the block with other components, and we cannot parameterize no parameterization for the elements. So if we could automate this, our life would be much better. So and third question is, you're gonna have a lot of those elements. You have more than one page. You describe different blocks, different web elements, and you have crazy boilerplate code that you would like to get rid of. You have a constructor that optimizes and some getters that help you work with them. So if you follow the object-oriented programming, then you need to be making them private. And then you need to have a layer class of steps that help you work with specific elements. So you would like to reduce those steps layers and add specific components that help do it. If you wear those nice glasses, everything is fine, but in reality it's not like this. So let's look at Java. Its evolution is very crazy fast. It's like every 3 months there's new Java appearing, Java 12 now. So PageObject has not been updated for years, and as used, it's still many years in use. And the Lambda has, in JDK 8, they have changed the way we address page objects. But so maybe we should look at Java here and try to take some functionality from there and improve it. Let's look at what we get from here. This will be a next generation evolution of the current page object, and it should be based on the interface. On this slide you see I am using the keyword interface. All the examples I have are on Java, but other languages can be used. So the way I use interface is in the same context as class, and I use traditional methods to describe my components. So let's start with the small data set and start with an interface. I have a page, some component, I have some notation for example, find by notation that searches for the elements. And if we compare the old approach on the left with the new approach on the right, where we use classes and constructors and getters, the new approach, we are using interfaces and methods in the new approach. So not much of a difference, right? But let's look at what positive sides and the advantages it gives us. Let's imagine we have a form here with 3 elements, 1 button, 2 fields that you need to fill in, login and password. In the old scheme of things, you would have to write your username field and password field. Only the red text would differ here. But here we can use the methods, and we can parameterize the method. and describe those two fields by one element, and it will be parameterized. So when we input our value into this method, it will be replaced by the text in the brackets. So let's see an example how we will see it in your tests. First, you get the context of your page. Then you call a method which is parameterized. Then you use Selenium API to call for standard methods. Next, you probably push some other value and use another Selenium method. With inheritance, you can inherit different classes from the main element. So previously I had to describe the header, describe the components, and add this header to each and every class. So I had to copy-paste a lot of times. Now it's different. I have described through the interface my so-called layer, GitHub header, and I've created an additional interface where I have added that interface and called it list header, and on the with header. And when I need to use that layer, I just inherit it. I turn it on by inheriting. If main page uses header, then I add it here. If any page, main page, and so on. Same for other layers. I can describe those layers and add them to where I need, and not add them to where I don't need them. By doing so, we can use multiple inheritance that is typical for Java. With that multiple inheritance, you can also, for example, you have that header layer from GitHub, and you see that it has 4 buttons, like Enterprise, Marketplace, Sign On, Sign Up, etc. What you can do is you can describe the button once, make it a parameterized element, and then add a button to a layer. You can describe your inputs and checkbox and whatever else, additional elements, and wherever your those components are used, you inherit, you extend the layer with it. By this, you use multiple inheritance from Java, 2 components. So how is it going to look in tests? Roughly this way. We get the context for our page, we get the layer, and we address the parameterized button, like all the values that will be elements for parameterization. So your website consists of some pages. Your page has different layers, different components, buttons, checkbox, links. And this approach is good because you can describe in your code once an element, a button, a checkbox, text area, whatever, that will be covering in your site a lot of different buttons. Also one-to-many approach. This is a great plus. It saves a lot of lines of code in your project, and you save time by not including thousands of elements in your page object. Usually it's less, up to 100 that I saw in a project, but still. So what other functions of Java 8 we can apply? So for people who know Java, there's default methods in Java 8, and for example, when we work with Selenium API, we clean up the field and then we enter something there. So to somehow merge this into one line, we can use default methods. So we use default method. See, default is here, is written here. So second line here is what we do here is we call the element that is defined by the parameter, and we clean it. And then we send it back and enter something there. So with the default methods, we can add any logic, like go to database, read something. So whatever you prefer, everything depends on your design and plan what you want to do. Using default methods, you can define specific activities and actions for your components if you require them. How do you use it in tests? In testing? Very simple. We have some context that we use to address the layers and the buttons, and we send the text. What are the benefits of this new scheme? That new approach of two-page object on interfaces. First, you can parameterize the elements. You don't need to describe them. You can just describe the element once and it will be parameterized. Then you reduce the amount of boilerplate code. You had to describe the constructors, handlers, everything for your components if you were describing them. So you have less boilerplate code. You can use multiple inheritance that you use both for layers and for separate elements like buttons that I showed you. And you can use default methods to add some specific logic to your component. Where can you find such an implementation to understand if it's real or not? Like the guy in black from Sberbank is telling us some bullshit. So it's actually implemented in Atlas, is something that followed the HTML element with a new approach. It's a flexible instrument, a wrapper of API and IPM. It's being developed, it's growing. Send, put more stars in GitHub. We like your support. So here is the current state for today. I just gave you a print screen. So the first module is core. It processes your pages and it's based on your proxy pattern, and it adds additional logic to your methods. And also there's an Atlas WebDriver module. It's a wrapper for WebDriver, some nice perks that I've been talking about. Everything that I was saying. And Atlas IPM is a wrapper for standard IPM. So element-wise, if you knew HTML elements, you had custom elements there. In the current case, in UI automation, you use web element. Atlas has two elements, like Atlas mobile element, and those two entities, they are inherited from a standard web element, and they add their own methods. So if you don't like something there, you think that there's, the thing lacks something, you want to do a triple click, you can launch your own element and use it. So this instrument gives you some flexibility in creating elements. Or you can use standard elements that are enough, if they are enough for you. So what options, what features do you have in this tool? You can try the new approach, interface instead of class. There are extension points. I will be talking about them in my presentation. There's a parameterized element for both modules, for IPM and WebDriver. There's default methods, multiple inheritance, and element list. there's no, when you automate a list, there's no list entity. So there's a built-in retry. Working with page object, the instrument, how does it look? So the tests look like you open a context you assign. You get the context for your page, you switch the layer, and you call standard API in Selenium. Same line. So you open the page, you address the layer, a header, you call the component, and you press submit. Okay. So how do you work with page object in Atlas? First of all, when you start working, you need to initialize your Atlas class Moist to get the configuration. First configuration would be the web driver. You get the web driver, and it is being used for automation of the wrapper to configure the driver. And the second part is you create your page-in method that create your page. And third, you use that page and call its methods, use its layers, and do whatever actions you prefer with it. So how is parameterization realized here? You use web element here, so you have added param here. So when you add some value, send some value to this method, it will be replaced with the red text in parentheses. So it will look like this, and you open some page and call some parameterized element based on some value, and you do the action based on that value. Are you still not asleep? A lot of code. Let's wake up. It's not too much has left. The essence of the elements collection is some entity that describes the elements. So the first block we have said that we have some repository card, and how we work with this list. We call the context of the page, we call for the collection of our elements, and we filter by some specific element. We get the first element. The built-in work with collection is already realized here, so you don't need to create your own wrappers. You can have a look at how the logic of processing those entities is realized. And you can add it to your custom framework. And this one more function of features of this code is that you can actually describe all your pages in one place in the code. So your site can have thousands of pages. You describe them all in one place as a site entity. So first we've described, we have pages. Second, we have second page, some search page, taking query parameters. Why we need them is to be able to call that page immediately, so that we don't list till and click till that page through other pages, but just open it immediately when we require to go there. And also we have those parse segments, the text in the parentheses. They can be replacing the values that we use. So by using that, we can open the page we need. So we call our site, we open our page by sending the Cometa and Atlas values there, and we call the methods that we click. So how it works under the hood. The Cometa and Atlas values have replaced the values that we need, and this page opens immediately. So this saves us a lot of time. Mobile automation. Instead of web page, we have the screen entity. You add the Atlas Appium with iOS and Find By and Android Find By notation, so you can define your component using two notations. And if you in one project you can create tests for both iOS and Android. So if you like Appium, there's a lot of conferences around it, and they say that it works quite well. So to summarize, I've shown you the new approach in Atlas. I said that we can reduce the boilerplate code. I explained the features of default methods, talked to you about the elements collection, and mobile automation that is present there. So let's talk more about dynamics. Interesting case. When you automate, there's often some exceptions of not found exception, stale element, and so element is not there. You clicked some other element and you use WebDriver wait or Fluent WebDriver. Who uses WebDriver wait? There's not much to come, so come on. Yeah, there's not enough people who are not asleep. So you can catch exceptions, but Atlas has a built-in retryer where you write this example of code, your steps, and when something is wrong, some thread is dead, it just repeats it. You need to think about the exceptions from Selenium or WebDriver. The same entity and the concept applies for working with lists. So you get a list of repositories and you filter them. You get the first element. It doesn't work. It returns 0. So the embedded retries just repeat the course of action. How many times it does? It depends on timeouts and polling method. So with timeouts, we say how long, what is the amount of time we will be repeating our actions, and how often will we be calling our side and executing our method. So let's assume we have one component that loads for during a lot of time. So for example, you have retry implementation. It will give you an option to define the timeout and the number of attempts. And using this approach, you can forget about wait WebDriver. You can skip doing try and catch and just write tests without waiting for specific elements. Some other outcomes. So to understand that there's embedded retry, the whole chain will start over, and you can use different elements. So assertions, some specific assertions about your methods. You have already two methods, part of Atlas mobile element, and should and wait until they understand matchers. So uncrossed matchers are used to create some checks, some interesting checks. And what's the difference? So should throws assertion error and assertion error. So why it has been done? To split the responsibilities. So the product effect, if you have it, it throws a should exception, and when you look through the report, you can give it to the functional test specialist. If it throws wait until, the orange colored exception, then it's some problem with the test, and the optimizer can look at what's wrong there and save time during discussion of the testing. So those methods are standard, and they are part of web element and mobile element. And I'm using additional library for matchers here, Yandex WebDriver matchers. So the first line is we look for this element to be displayed during 5 seconds, and the second line checks that the component has tag name input. Assertions are there for the collections. And extension points. So when you can extend, so who knows about the fifth JUnit, JUnit 5? So why do you need extension methods? You can redefine both the standard behavior of the method and add something specific. So you don't like, for example, some search criteria. So you want some IDs to be taken from a database. You can use extension points. Using extension points, you redefine the behavior. What can you do? You can redefine the way we get locators. You can introduce your own notation, like find by in DB or any other notation, and add it to our elements. And you can redefine the standard methods for click, clear, and send keys. So first thing you need to do is you need to implement the method extension interface. You redefine the test and invoke methods. So they check that the test checks that we redefine this method, and invoke injects the logic. So then we add, when we initialize Atlas, we add them. So with modules, Atlas drivers and Atlas API is the whole completely realized through extensions. And there's many more of them, but I chose the top ones. You can have a look at how they are implemented and redefine them, see how they created, and change whatever you prefer. You can redefine everything. And one thing, one issue, like when you need to automate on a very unpleasant browser, Internet Explorer, and not always Selenium works well with this browser. The biggest pain is when it clicks or doesn't click on the element. For example, you would like to redefine click for the whole project. So to call JavaScript click. Yeah, you really should not do this, but sometimes you just have no other option. So what do you do to achieve this? You say that in the test method you redefine the click method. In the invoke method, you just get our WebDriver, paste it till JavaScript executor, and in this line we actually do a JavaScript click. So all the clicks in the test project will be JavaScript clicks. And then we add this extension point when we initialize the project. You can add multiple extension points. You can redefine all the extension points and add them all. But the repository has some. So like you would like to try, if you would like to try 1.5 version, all 3 modules are extendable. With Allure, we have integration. Every method is recorded, so when we click something, we enter something somewhere. So this all is logged into Allure, and this integration is additional extension. It's not yet part of the main projects, but Artem Sokovets in his GitHub, he actually added that extension. So if you want to use Allure integration, you just need to initialize the extension. This tool is also integrated with your test format and JUnit 5, TestNG, Cucumber, etc. So you can use it with them. If you don't like the new tool, nowadays in each conference everyone is saying they've created their own tool. If you don't want to take the framework, but you like the logic, you like the approach, and using the interfaces, page object on interfaces, what you can do is you can split your loader, introduce a decorator, and look at some custom page. If you don't want to get all the data from Atlas, but you just want to create a page object on the interface and have a look at how Atlas core method implements the processing, then you can just take it from here and implement it in your project. Those things are not mandatory. So we're on the finish line, so let's summarize. I've shown you how you can implement page object based on the interface. I've shown you how you can parameterize the elements because we use methods. How you can use multiple inheritance. Showed you some Atlas features and extension points. And this instrument is not a silver bullet, so it's not APR or it's just a tool with a new approach. And if you like this new approach, for me it was, by the way, very uncomfortable at first. I needed a day for my brain to switch to this, and as I said, this is not a silver bullet, not a PR. This is really nice tool, very flexible. You can really customize it for your needs. It's some bundle that you can modify. And if you like the ideas of this project, its main thought, then become a contributor. We are very happy to welcome all the contributors. So now Q&A. Okay. Wait. What else I wanted to add? On this link, I was doing a presentation on SQL days, and we have 3 comparisons there. First, we have Selenium APR. Second approach, we use page element, and third approach, we use Atlas. You can have a look what's the difference there, and then third, the lowest line is a Telegram channel supporting the Atlas toolkit. I have a Twitter. Please sign up to my Twitter. I'm happy to welcome new subscribers and new friends. I would like to publish an article about what I've been talking about today on Medium or Hubber. And thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Just a second. 2 questions. So you didn't like it, right? Will the product be free forever? Yeah, the product will be free. There's no plans to introduce any subscriptions. Which type of value can we plug in? The latest one, yeah, 2.0. You can. What I've shown, the link there, Allure adapter link, it is implemented with the listeners, using the listeners, and the listener works for 3 or 4 methods. So it is called before your method is started, like click after, or it doesn't work. So you can add the report portal support. For example, get the data for Allure and support the report portal for your custom report or something else. It depends on how well you program, and like if you're a medium or beginner Java programmer, you probably can handle this. Yeah, 2 questions. One more question about HTML elements. So you store all the elements together with a page, right, in the same pattern. without dividing the logic, right? Well, there's two elements, atlas page, and so you have a page, and the page with all the elements are stored in the same class with this page. Yeah, it's the same as the previous approach. All your elements were stored in the page. Well, how old this approach is? The current implementation increases the introduction pane for the hierarchy and inheritance. So the main question is who writes the test? Here, as I said, it's quite simple. So you had a class before. Now it's an interface. You used to use the class members, but now you use the methods with find by notation. So nothing will change in the page description. If you talk about the hierarchy or multiple inheritance, then it's not very difficult to switch your brain, and this will all depend on how you implement that multiple inheritance. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, well, you don't want to do it, you don't do it. You can just use the old approach, but define everything through the interfaces. If I was unsuccessful in replying your question, let me know, change the form. The bigger question is the automation framework grows in complexity. So if you split the data from code and store it separately, then this data can be easily modified by the ops, by the functionality testers. Yeah, true. I said this is a toolkit, so you can store your locators in database and create a view for your testers where they just go and fix them, or use the selector to change them. You can store locators anywhere, but the processor, the way you define and process them, will be done through the extensions that I was showing to you. And the code will be taking the database, take your locator, and then search on the page. This is a very flexible thing that is very easily changeable. So you can use a plugin for your idea. We had some experience creating those plugins and using GUI interface. Did it work? Well, we didn't use interfaces. We used abstract classes 2 or 3 years ago, and we stayed there. But HTML elements, we didn't accept them because this didn't fly. They work well with couple hundreds, maybe couple thousand elements, but now this doesn't work well with thousands of elements. So, yeah, I agree, understand. You can add some new stuff to your project. We also do it the same way. Did you try to use Selenium? What is the advantage of Atlas? Well, we did. I'm gonna say it's not a battle of tools. It's not PR of some tool. It's my opinion on this specific tool. And I don't want to compare them because Selenium was created for the developers, and Atlas was for different use, different tools. Don't want to compare them or make PR for one of them. I think that they are both great for their specific tasks. And if you use Selenium and you like it, I would not recommend you switch to Atlas, or just recommend you to just try something new. If you have a project and it has a lot of tests inside, don't switch. So you can define by yourself, and page object is just a storage for specific selectors, and you can store whatever you want. Well, in fact, you just describe some. It depends on your imagination. You can add some components and create your custom notation for whatever you like, and use it for all your methods and process it. The way you process it depends on your imagination. What can you store there? Whatever you like. So you use the element, you have an element, you have method. Instead of find by notation, you add, get from database notation, or whatever your, whatever your task dictates or imagination tells you. You can get the allocators from somewhere, and then you just process it in your code and inject your own processor and handler there. There was a question, but it disappeared. So I have deleted them because, you can discuss this afterwards. If you would like to see how it looks in code, I have examples on my notebook. Please come to me, and thank you very much.